session. We're very excited to have you all with us today, and also just letting you know by way of housekeeping that today's session is being recorded. So for all of you that have joined us, of course, you're here for an applicant briefing for this year's iAwards. I'm Collins Rex. I'm the Chief Judge of the iAwards, and I'll also be your presenter for today. Now, just to give you a little bit of context around today's session, we're going to take you through the process of entering the iAwards, the categories in which you can enter, some of those important criteria of which you should be aware. And then I'm also going to talk you through what it is that the judges will be looking for when you put your submission in, the sorts of things that you need to cover, a couple of hints and tips along the way. We will be taking questions at the end of the session, so please don't raise your hand for any questions because anything that you ask at the start might very well be answered over the course of the presentation. If you do have any questions, I'm going to ask you to type them in the chat bar. So type them in the chat bar and we'll take them at the end. If the question pops up while we're going through, if it's relevant to something that we are discussing at the time, I may very well answer it as we go through, but it all depends on whether it's information that will be covered later. Now, before we start today's session, I'd also like to pay my respect to all the custodians of the lands on which we're all residing, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And I know we're all joining from various parts of the country, so wherever it is that you're joining us from, welcome and respect to all of you. So let's start off with why it is that you might want to be thinking of entering an iAward if you've not considered it before, or indeed maybe you've started your application but you've never quite got down the path of completing it. The important thing to know is that entering an iAward actually puts you on the radar. It gives you Australian recognition through the state iAwards categories, and it also, of course, eventually puts you on that track to national recognition. The great thing about winning an iAward at the state level is that you become a finalist at the national level. If you win at the national level, then you also get international recognition, because all national iAward winners and merit recipients have the opportunity of representing Australia at the Asia Pacific ICT Alliance, or APICTA Awards, and that will be held later this year. It's also a great way to stress test your innovation, because you will be judged against your peers, essentially. So you'll know that you will stand out head and shoulders above your peers if you win, and that means you know that you actually stack up. And of course, there will be exposure at the highest possible level. That's always important to know. There'll be lots of opportunities for you to leverage the publicity that you gain through the iAwards. All finalists are highlighted. And if you win, of course, you are also actively promoted through the AIIA's channels and various others as well. You will also be on the radar of various state governments, so very important to note. And of course, you will have the opportunity to expand your network. State iAwards, there are ceremonies that are held. You get to meet all the people that are finalists, and obviously a number of judges and other people that are around. And if you make it through to the nationals, well, then the exposure is just amplified X-fold. Now let's look at some of those iAward categories. There are 7 of them, and we'll talk a little bit later on about some of them, the overarching criteria, but there are things that you do need to note in terms of how you are eligible to enter into the various categories. Now, the first category that we talk about is student and education, and it's very important that we do this one first, because I do know that a number of students have joined us today, and it is also one of those categories that the criteria of whether you are a student or not is very important and needs to be applied. So it is important that you are actually an enrolled student. So you need to be enrolled either this year, that being 2025, or you need to have been enrolled in 2024. You need to have been enrolled or be enrolled at an Australian educational institution at either the primary or secondary level, or indeed the higher education or tertiary level. Now, you need to be a student. That is very important. And the innovation that you enter must be one that you worked on while you were enrolled as a student in 24 or are currently working on as a student in 25. Now, I will be going through some more criteria around the student category a little bit later on today. But just note, if you are a business and you are providing services and innovations into the education space, this is not the category for you. This category is only for enrolled students. If you are someone who is a business and you have provided an solution into the education sector, you will be entering in the business category. The next category we're going to talk about is startup. And again, there are very specific criteria that apply to startup. And you have to meet all of the following criteria in order to enter in this category. So first of all, you need to have been registered as a company on or after the 1st of January 2022. If you registered as a business before 1 January 2022, you are not eligible to enter the startup category and you need to enter one of the business categories. The founder of the company and or the product developer must still be a significant shareholder of the company. And the company must not be a subsidiary of a parent company that was established prior to 1 January 2022. So very importantly, you need to have been registered after the 1st of January 2022. You can't be a subsidiary of a company that was registered before that date. And you as the founder still need to be intrinsically involved in the company in order to qualify for entrance in this category. The next category is business and industry. This one is fairly self-explanatory. You need to have a solution that is related to business or industry. So you've developed a product, a service, an innovation that is used or will be used in the business context. Of course, this applies to every one of the categories other than student. You do need to be a registered Australian company. That means you need to have a valid ABN. The next category is technology platform. So this is a solution involving a new or a repurposed technology platform. Now, if you have developed a brand new tech platform, then obviously this one is a no-brainer for you. If you have repurposed technology, you need to show significant novel use of that platform. And again, you need to have an ABN. Government and public sector solution. Again, self-explanatory, your solution needs to be applicable to the government and or public sector. Now, you can also be a government department to enter in this, provided as the government department, you have developed the technology yourself. If, as the government department, you have enlisted the services of a developer, then you will have a joint entry, both you as the government department and the developer of the solution, and they will be the primary entry into this category. And again, ABN, of course, unless you're a government department. The not-for-profit or community category, again, is one of those that sometimes creates a little bit of confusion. So there are two ways in which you can enter this category. You are either a not-for-profit yourself, or you have developed a solution that addresses a problem in the not-for-profit or community sector. So you don't have to be a not-for-profit to enter this category, but if you're not a not-for-profit, you need to have created something that is intrinsically applicable in the community or not-for-profit sector. So it's an innovation that helps the community in some way. It could be a health application, etc. But if you don't have one of those, you need to be a not-for-profit yourself. And again, you need to have a valid ABN. And then there's the sustainability and environmental solution category. Now, this one is for environmental solutions and innovations that facilitate sustainability, but it is environmental sustainability. So these are all those technologies that help people to be clean, green, etc., to make our world overall a more sustainable place, to ensure that you address issues around the environment. Very important to note that in this category. And again, of course, you've got to have a valid ABN. Now, if you've gone to our website or if you've been involved in the iAwards in the past, you'll know that we also have a diversity award. Important here to acknowledge the fact that this award is to recognize an organization that has engaged in, promoted, and maintained diversity and inclusion by creating an environment that recognizes, encourages, and embraces the talents of each individual. Now, the Diversity Award sits outside the main iAward categories. So this doesn't go through the judging process that I will be outlining to you today. There's an entirely different set of criteria for this one, and you can find them all by going to the URL that you see on your screen. You don't, if you win this award, go through to the National iAwards. So that's also important to note. It's a separate judging process. It sits alongside but outside the main iAward. Going to enter it separately, and if you win, unless you are also a winner in one of the main categories, you will not automatically become a finalist in the National iAwards. So let's look now at the entry process for the iAwards. All entries are lodged online, and there is no entry fee for the iAwards. In round one, which is the first stepping stone, essentially in the iAwards, everything is done remotely. So you enter online, judging is done remotely by a panel of highly experienced judges. All our judges are industry professionals. In fact, I like to refer to them as the stalwarts of the industry, and they all make their decisions on whether you are a winner or a merit based on your written and your video submission. They are going to judge your entry by what you submit. They're not going to go outside of that submission to find information that you may not have provided to them. They don't judge you by going to your website, by speaking to people about you. They judge you on what you have provided to them. And it is very important to note that. Now, if you are entering, oh, and I see we've cut off the screen there. If you are entering through WA or Tasmania, you will not enter through the normal iAwards process, and we'll provide you some information about this separately because I see the slide has sort of rejigged itself a little. If you're in WA, you're going to enter through the Insight Awards, and if you're in Tasmania, you're going to enter through the TAS ICT Awards, and we'll make sure that you have appropriate links for those. Now, the next step in your entry process is that of the second round, which is the National iAwards. Now, you don't have to worry too much about that today, other than to note that there is no separate entry process for the Nationals. If you win or you are a merit award at the state level in round one, you automatically become an entrant and indeed a finalist in the National iAwards. So there's only one entry that you make for both of those rounds. So all round one winners and merits become finalists in the Nationals. And at the national level, very different from round one, all judging is in person. So you effectively pitch your solution to a panel of judges. And further down the track, if you become a finalist, we'll again address how that works. But it is important to note that in order to be taken into consideration for the Nationals, you need to physically be present. So you might want to take a note of these dates now, because we're assuming that all of you online are potential winners. And the dates are the 27th and the 28th of August in Adelaide. Now, there is a whole list of things that you need to be aware of before you enter. I suggest that you go online and you can see the URL on your screen. familiarize yourself with all the criteria before you submit an entry. That way you make sure that you may not be submitting something that is disqualified because it wasn't valid. Now, you can enter in more than one category in the iAwards. The important thing to note is that you have to submit a separate entry for every single category in which you enter. There isn't just one entry where you tick boxes and you automatically enter in all of those categories. So if, for example, you have entered for the export awards across any one of the states in Australia, there you would enter one form and you tick boxes and one entry applies across all those categories. For the iAwards, you have to submit a separate entry for each one. And the reason we do that is because the criteria for judging are different in each one of the categories. If you're entering in startup, of course, you're going to pitch your startup solution. If you're entering that same entry in the business award, you're not going to be pitching it as a startup, but as a fully fledged business entry. So bear that in mind. Also, you cannot enter the same innovation in more than one category. So just bear that in mind as well. So you can have separate entries for separate things, but no single innovation may be entered in more than one primary category. So some other criteria to note, and I'm not going to step you through the whole list of criteria because we'll be here all evening, but some things that are really important to note. You need to own the intellectual property of the innovation that you enter. This is an exception for students, and we'll talk about students in a moment. So if you don't own the IP, you can't enter the innovation. At least 51% of your entry's value add needs to have taken place in Australia. In other words, 51% of your innovation needs to have Australian content. And if we're not sure of whether it meets that criteria, we are going to check. And you need to be ready to provide the proof that we need. So if you've collaborated with somebody internationally, you need to make very sure that their contribution does not encompass more than 49%. So just bear that in mind. This is an Australian competition. Yours needs to be an Australian innovation. If you have won an iAward in the previous 3 years, so 22, 3, or 24, you can't enter the same innovation. Obviously, your business can enter again with a different innovation, but you cannot enter the same innovation in this year's iAwards if you were a winner or a merit recipient in the past 3 years, unless your innovation has transformed substantially over those past 3 years. So if you were a winner last year and you're entering the same innovation in this year's iAwards, we will want to see that it is in fact a different innovation because it has developed substantially. So you may have entered an innovation, for example, in the startup category last year and won. Now you're entering the same innovation in the Business and Industry Award, for example, because as a startup, it hadn't yet achieved commercialization, it didn't yet have customers. Now you can prove that it has actually evolved from beta and it's a final product, and it has customers, it has references, etc. So bear that in mind. You can't enter if you have won. Now, just a word on the student entries. You need to be enrolled as a student, and I explained that earlier on today, but that doesn't mean that the innovation you enter is directly related to your coursework. The relevant innovation may in fact be a class project rather than something that is related to the curriculum. It can be an extracurricular project, or it can be indeed unrelated to your studies entirely, but you still need to have been a student when you did it. Tertiary students must own at least some of the IP of their innovation, or they need to be in the process of negotiating IP ownership with their educational institution. So be that a university or a TAFE. And if needs be, you need to be able to provide proof of that. Now, if you are a research student, you're not considered a student for the iAwards. you will enter in one of the industry categories. So bear that in mind as well. If you are a research student, what you are going to enter is not in the student category, but in one of the industry categories. Now, what does the entry actually look like? It's really very simple. We keep it as simple as possible at the iAwards to make it as easy as possible for you to do what it is that you need to do. First of all, you're going to answer 4 simple questions in a written form. You're going to, and these are the questions. So what is the opportunity that your solution enables and for whom? How is your solution different? What is the technology that powers your solution? And how is your solution making or will make an impact? So 4 easy questions, but very important questions, because answering these questions is going to give the judges all the information they need to make a calculated decision about whether you are a winner or not. If you don't answer these properly, the judges can't judge you appropriately. The next component of this entry is a 3-minute video. Now, it can be shorter than 3 minutes, but it cannot be longer. So a 3-minute max video. Why the video? Well, the video obviously gives you an opportunity to look down the barrel of a camera and speak directly to the judges. What you are going to include in your video is going to add information to your written answers. Keep it simple. You don't have to go into a huge amount of detail in your video. It's also not necessary for you to have a professionally produced video. So you don't need to bring in a camera crew. If you want to, by all means do. You won't be judged on how fancy your video is, but you will be judged on the content of that video and whether or not that video is professional. So if you're going to record it on your iPhone, for example, make sure that at least it's in a stand and it's stable. You can be seen and heard properly. If you're demonstrating something, make sure that it's visible in the camera frame. In the past, we've had people that have had great little videos where they've explained things really well, but they've tried to point out things on whiteboards, for example, and the whiteboard was out of shot. So make sure that whatever you put in your video is visible, is clear, is concise, and is professional, even though you haven't brought in a camera crew to do it. Now, what are the judges looking for? Well, the judges want a comprehensive overview of your innovation. So they want to know what your innovation is all about. Bear in mind, this is a tech competition. So even though the iAwards focuses on what technology does to improve our world, it is first and foremost a technology competition. So the judges want to know, how was the tech developed? How was it designed? How was it built? What is it? Don't just talk about the warm and fuzzy stuff, but you need to include some of the technical aspects of your innovation too, so that the judges can judge you from that perspective. What is your unique value proposition? Bearing in mind that there are any number of solutions out there who probably do pretty much what yours does. There's very little new under the sun. So even though you think you're the only one who's ever done this, chances are you're not. But what is it that makes your innovation distinct? And what are its practical applications that make it useful? And then what is your competitive advantage? Again, as I said, not everybody is going to be able to prove that nobody does what they do, but that doesn't mean you don't have a competitive advantage. So clearly show how your innovation meets the user requirements and the value that it brings to your intended customer or user. Value is vitally important to show. The clearer your submission is, the more thorough your submission is, the more likely the judges are to understand what you do and to award you accordingly. So give yourself every chance to succeed by providing as much information as you possibly can to the judges. Now, the important date for you to note is that the entry deadline is Friday, the 4th of April, 2025. And we assume that that is 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time, bearing in mind that daylight saving only ends on the 6th of April. So make note of that date, make sure you get your entry in, and make sure you lodge it well before the cut-off time. As we all know, technology has a nasty habit of failing us just when we need it most. So don't wait until the last minute to submit your entry. Please do it as early as you can. If you finished it, if it's ready to roll, get it into the system. Once it's in the system, you will still be able to access it until the cutoff date. So you can still make some changes to it if you need to do so. But please note that cutoff date. And that brings us to the end of our formal presentation. So if there are any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box. I'll take them as they come up in the chat box. This is your opportunity to ask any questions that you might want to have answered. And while you're typing your questions into the chat box, I'm also just going to introduce you to Van Nguyen, who's joined us online. Van is the point person for all the technical stuff around the iAwards. So Van runs our awards system on the back end. So if you have any technical issues, if you try to lodge something and it won't let you, Van is going to be your point person. And after today, we will also circulate contact details so that you can get hold of Van and of myself if you have any specific questions. Now, bearing in mind, if you do ask me a question, I'm going to answer in general terms. I'm not going to answer specifically for your business, because this is not about giving anybody an unfair advantage. It's about making sure that everybody has the same information and therefore can answer the same questions. So if there are any questions, type them. I don't know if I've just answered everything and you don't have any questions, but we'll give it a couple more minutes.
We have 2 questions, Collins.
They're just not showing up on my screen, Van. So you might want to, let me just see, maybe they've come up in a different, they've come up in the Q&A box, which wasn't showing on my screen. Okay, perfectly. Okay, so let's look at these. So we have a question that reads, we have a solution that is built for public health districts. It's a patient engagement solution that benefits both patients and districts. You can enter in both the government or not-for-profit community category. That's the question. Do you enter in one or the other? You'd probably be more suited to the not-for-profit community category, but certainly it can be a government solution too if you've worked specifically with the government department. So I hope that answers your question, Kathy. So another question around the categories. We're a university. We've built an app to improve student experience and well-being. This would be not-for-profit community, definitely. It certainly wouldn't be students, so just bear that in mind. So if you're a university, you've developed something, this is clearly one that is around health and well-being. So not-for-profit community, I would suggest, is your category. And then tertiary students needing to own some of their IP. Yes, you do need to. So what we mean by this is that we want to know that what you have developed is not going to be owned by the university. Because if it's owned by the university, it is not your innovation. So we want to know that the university, so it might be as simple as the university just giving you a letter, which you can hold on to. You don't need to provide it with your submission, but if we ask you for it, we want to be able to know that you've got some confirmation from your university that they are not going to outright own your IP and commercialize that IP. So hopefully that answers your question, Oscar. If it hasn't, by all means, send us a note after the fact and we can make sure that we can clarify that a little bit more. Someone doesn't have a question. The success rates of the iAwards, someone has asked. Not sure what you mean by that question. If you mean in terms of how many entries related to how many winners, it really does vary from year to year, and it depends on how many entries, because again, that varies from year to year. It's never the same from one year to the next. So I don't know if that's what you meant by your question. You might want to clarify it with a further question. That might make it a little bit easier. Right, so partners in the USA and Australia, but mostly owned in the USA, going to commercialization. So which is the category? Without knowing what it is, and I'm just sort of scrolling through here to see. Okay, so your purpose is enabling community connection and well-being. So I would suggest that this is a not-for-profit community, but you might also want to look at tech platform, considering that it's also a free platform for users. Bearing in mind, if you enter the technology platform category with the solution, you need to be able to clearly show that it's a novel use of a platform, or it's a new platform that you've created. And then you need to go into the technical aspects far more clearly than you would in the not-for-profit category. So just bear that one in mind. And if you've got those partners, also please make sure that you own at least 51% of that IP. Next question, a property technology solution catering for mainly B2B clients. I would suggest, again, here, business category would definitely be the one that you need. However, if what you are doing, again, is a novel new platform, then by all means enter in both the technology platform and the business category, but only enter the technology platform category if you have a very strong case to make that this is a platform that doesn't really exist at present, that yours is unique in that respect. Next question relates to applications between universities and private companies. Are they eligible? Yes, they would be. Partnerships are always eligible, but you need to decide who's going to be the primary entrant. And I would suggest that the business needs to be the primary entrant, and the university will then be indicated as a partner, and you will point out what component of the solution has been developed by the university and how. So what is that partnership? How does the partnership work? And that will be a very important component of your application as well. But definitely more than happy to have this. Next question. We're a startup that tries to provide a bridge between local government and community to build a volunteer community group. Category, startup, you can probably enter in all three of those, yes. So as the startup, obviously emphasizing those startup criteria, making clear that you are a new business, etc., that this is how you've come to the solution, this is why, this is the problem that you've identified. For government, if this is being used within a government application, yes, and in this case, it certainly is the case. Here, I would suggest that you need your local government client to be part of your submission so that it's clearly understood that you were addressing a need that they had. And the community and not-for-profit one, I think, is a bit of a no-brainer in this case. So don't worry about that one. I think that one you'll have down. Anonymous attendee, no, you don't have to be a member of the AIIA to enter. Okay, so Oscar, back to you. If your innovation had nothing to do with your university, you came up with it on your own, you don't need to be a patent. No, you don't. So this is important as well. So in the case of the student entries, if you have developed your application in the context that is not related to your university studies, and therefore the university cannot possibly have any right to it, then it's understood that the IP would be entirely yours, so you don't have to worry about providing any of those IP clarifications. Australian Health Promotion charity working to increase mental health and social capacity, some SaaS integration into our platform. No, don't worry, that won't affect your quota, because it's understood that you've built on a platform. Your innovation is the one that is important here, not the platform that you used for the innovation. So as long as your innovation is your own, your innovation was developed within Australia, therefore more than 51% criteria will absolutely have been met, we all understand that some of you are going to be using Microsoft technology, for example. It's not about the underpinning technology necessarily, it's about the innovation and how that innovation was developed in Australia and is an Australian innovation. So you don't need to be concerned about your SaaS component. Okay, another question. For the student category, we have to get an email confirmation from our university that they will support me and they will not own the IP. Look, don't get too hung up on the IP question. If you are, let me just put it this way, if you're a student and the innovation that you are submitting is directly related to your university studies and is part of your curriculum. So if this is a curriculum project that you did under the auspices of the university, you will need some kind of supporting letter from your university, which you're not going to submit with your application, but you will have it should you be called upon to provide it. If what you are entering as your innovation was not part of your curriculum, therefore it wasn't a project that you did under the auspices of the university, you did it while you were a student at that university, it will be understood that this is yours. So don't get too hung up on that. But if it's part of the curriculum, it's a project and overseen by the university might have a claim to it, in which case you will have to prove that it is in fact going to be yours. So hopefully that makes it clear. Great. Thanks, Ivy. Now, I think we've answered them all. If I've missed anything, I'm just scrolling through the list. All seems to be there. Hopefully all those answers to all your questions have given you the necessary information that you needed. If you have any other questions, we'll allow another couple of minutes for questions still be added. Have we added one now? I think we might have. Let's just have a look. Just scrolling down. It always takes a long time for these things to come through. Right, let's just get there. Down, 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 down. Right, so we have, I'm a stroke survivor leading our organization. We are a predominantly peer-led organization. As I mentioned to you, the Diversity Award, so the question here goes around which category again, whether the Diversity Award or the not-for-profit, etc. The Diversity Award is separate from the iAwards, so please go along to the website, have a look at the criteria and the entry process for the Diversity Award. So we're not going to discuss that one. I cannot make a call here on whether you are eligible for that one or not. I can say that you would definitely be eligible in the not-for-profit and community category. Without knowing what it is that your solution provides, I can't tell you whether you would also be eligible for the technology platform category, but I can tell you that you would definitely be eligible for the not-for-profit community. And again, just reiterating, if you are going to enter in the technology platform category, and this applies to all of you on today's session, bear in mind that technology platform is all about the technology. So you have to have a very strong technical application in that category. Irrespective of any other categories in which you enter, in the tech platform category, you need to have a very strong technology-focused application, and you need to explain your technology very well. Question here that reads, if our software relies on an overseas team for development, but it is Australian owned and registered, and you are eligible, but you have to meet that 51% criterion. It is a very tricky question when you have not actually developed your technology in Australia. My first instinct is to say that no, you would not be eligible, but you probably will be, but you need to explain the relationship between the team in Australia and how this technology originated and the development team that sits offshore. Doesn't matter if you're an Australian-owned company. If you didn't actually develop the technology in Australia, it's not an Australian innovation. So please bear that in mind. you need to have developed your solution in Australia. That is very, very important. So bear that in mind. I don't see any other questions right now. We've had a couple of comments and observations, but no questions. Any other questions, please get them in now. We'll allow another one or two. Let's see, I think we've had another one added. Oscar, are there any word limits? If you go into the submission, you'll see exactly what you're allowed and not allowed to do there. So once you start your submission, that will all become very clear. The important thing is, irrespective of how many words you are or are not allowed, make sure that you answer the questions appropriately. You don't have a lot of scope to do that, so make sure that you get to the point and you do it as concisely as you possibly can while still providing as much information as possible.
Have a limit of 300 words for each question.
Great. Thanks, Van, for reminding me about that. So 300 words, Oscar. Not a lot of words, but any more than that, you actually just get caught up in stuff that is fluff. So 300 words actually gives you enough scope to just cut to the chase, which is why we limit it. And it also makes it easier for the judges, because if there was no word limit, of course, somebody might provide 1,000 words and somebody might provide 200, and it's really impossible to compare like for like. Any other questions? One more, looks like. Okay. I did have another question. Oscar, just retype it for me because, yes, I may have missed it. Sorry. I'm scrolling through dozens of questions as they've come in here. So just retype your question for me because I'm not going to scroll back up and look for it now. Chances are it'll just get lost in the fray again. So just type it again. While Oscar's typing that other question, the important thing is that you get in and you start your submission as quickly as possible, because once you're in the system, we will then be able to contact you with additional information as it comes up. If we, for example, get someone contacting us and several people have raised the same issue, we can then provide a question and answer to everybody who's in the system. You'll also get reminders to complete your application on time, etc. So please do make sure that you get your application into the system as quickly as possible. Okay, so Oscar, you ask, what is the level of progress expected for a student entry? Is there a certain point of development you need to, or can the submission range? Yes, when in the student entry category, there's a lot of latitude allowed. So the judges that are the category panel for student entry have all been judging student entries for many years. They are generally people who are in the industry and related to tertiary and primary education. Sorry, just got a frog in my throat. And they know what to look for. So the important thing is, and also bear in mind that the student category is not just for tertiary students. It's for primary and secondary students as well. Sorry, just got this frog in my throat, which doesn't want to go, so excuse me for a moment. Right, I'm back in business. So a student entry is just that. It's a concept, it's an idea. It can range from just a concept, but why you came up with that is very important. So what is the problem you've identified? What is the solution you've identified? How far down the track are you in the development of that solution? Is it already fully formed? It needs to have at least started. So you need to have at least developed your concept. You're not going to win if all you say is, I've decided to do something to test whether the earth is in fact round and not flat, and I will get around to doing something about that. That won't fly. But if your concept is, we've noticed that a number of people are questioning the fact that the earth is round, we have put together a solution that works in this way that is going to test these parameters around geography and etc. And this is the technology solution we've come up with. I know that's a really basic, really dumb example, but it should give you a sense of where you go. So Oscar, you don't have to have a completely working, fully formed, but it needs to be on the track to being implementable. And it needs to at least have identified a problem and a solution and a potential customer for that solution. I hope that answers your question. And I think that's probably about all we have time for. I'm conscious of the fact that this is eating into your evening. We've been at it for 45 minutes and we've answered lots and lots of questions. So hopefully that gives you all the background you need to really come up with a great entry. And please do enter. It's a really quick, easy process to do. And it's also a really good way for you to test your solution against your thoughts. Once you start putting the stuff down on paper, you also acknowledge the gaps in your own knowledge base, and it allows you to fill in those gaps. So don't look at this as just an entry for a competition. This is also a way for you to fine-tune your pitch, and your pitch to investors, your pitch to any number of others who can help you further down the track. So thanks everybody for your attention and for being part of today's session. We look forward to seeing your entries come through the system, and we really do hope that you are going to enter, and we look forward to seeing you at the state iAwards systems as we move through, and at all of those state events. Bearing in mind, if you are in WA and TAS, you're not going to enter through the iAwards, and we will send links after today's session with the actual links to the Insight Awards and the TAS ICT Awards. We all come back together again at the National iAwards, but at this level, you are going to enter separately. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Van, for hosting today's session. And break a leg, everyone. We look forward to seeing your submissions. So from me, goodbye.